Victoria Zielinski.
And I'm Priscilla Morales. We are ninth graders at Sports and Medical Science Academy.
Today we'll be talking to ERIN MONROE, curator of American paintings, sculpture, contemporary art, and decorative arts at the Wadsworth Atheneum Museum of Art and lead of Art Bridges Project.
Could you start off by telling us what a curator is?
I do get that question a lot because it's a word that I think is out there in the world, but doesn't necessarily bring to mind what the job looks like. But a curator is responsible for a certain type of collection, at least in the case of the Wadsworth. I'm responsible for choosing what artworks are displayed, what order they're displayed in. And I also get to do research on artworks, including the time period in which they were made or the artists themselves. So that's two of the things. Another exciting part of my job is I'm able to make decisions about what artworks we acquire and bring into the museum collection.
Could you walk us through a typical day on the job?
There's a plan to, let's say, put up a new exhibit. That day would have a pretty clear agenda, like go into the gallery, work with the colleagues that hang the artwork and display the artwork, and things will go according to plan. But sometimes things come up and you'll get a call from the director like, oh, there's a school group coming through and so is sick and we need you to pop down and head into the galleries and talk about a work of art. So there's a little bit of behind the scenes that I really enjoy, but a lot of times there's a chance to meet with the public and different visitors. And those are two examples of thinking about the day differently. I also do sit at my desk a lot and do a fair amount of reading and kind of project management to make sure, okay, is this project on task? Is this painting ready to be displayed? Is the text I wrote about it, does it make sense? Has it been edited? Are we gonna make a postcard, and is the graphic designer on time with that postcard to let the people know about the exhibit? So it's a little bit of management of many different parts.
Have you always had an interest in art? When did you realize that the museum curator was the path for you?
As I was just saying before the interview started, I don't really remember going to museums as a kid. I think one of my first sort of moments that sticks out in my mind is in high school. I had a really wonderful history teacher, and she decided to do a unit on art history. And I specifically remember learning about the pyramids in Egypt and how the pyramids were made and what the symbolism was. And I remember thinking, well, I don't know if I would always call myself a history buff, but when you learn about the pass through works of art, it becomes a little more exciting for me. So I had that art history moment in high school. I didn't really think much of it. I ended up taking some art history classes in college and kind of got hooked from there and realized, okay, well, what do you do with an art history degree? I had no idea. And in fact, the career counselors didn't really have a lot of advice, and they said, oh, there's this new thing called the internet. We think you can find a job there. And I ended up coming home. I grew up in Connecticut, and a neighbor, her daughter was an intern at the Wadsworth Atheneum. And I decided to apply for an internship there. And little by little realized, okay, so there are careers that you can do that are in the art world, including being a curator. So the internship at the Wadsworth was really, really helpful, and ended up going back to school to get another degree, and then actually was able to be hired by the Wadsworth a few years later.
What was your educational experience like? Did you always have that interest in art?
I ended up taking an art history class kind of to try something different. I almost failed a chemistry class and I was really bummed out, but this art history class seemed interesting and I got a decent grade, and my parents said, well, maybe you should do more of that instead of less of the science. And it was really a shift in many ways academically, but I can't help but think there's this comparison to, say you look at a painting or a work of art and there are clues in there that can kind of reveal a little bit about the story that's being told. And I feel similarly like maybe my crime scene investigation thing was like reading clues in a way. So there's part of me that just likes to question what I'm looking at. And I think that is the only thing in common between the art and the science.
Did you go to college? If so, for how long and what did you study? Was there anything in the school that inspired you to go on the path you're on?
I did. I went to 4 years of college where I ended up becoming an art history major. As I said, I went in thinking I would do science and particularly biology, and then very quickly changed my mind. And I was able to have a minor degree as well in African studies. And that was sort of just, again, I had a really interesting professor that was from South Africa, and I was really interested in the history of the continent, and some of the art history that I took was also African art. And I thought maybe one day I would combine the two. But after college, I came out with this art history degree, wondered, gosh, what am I going to do? Did the internship at the Wadsworth and realized in order to really continue on the path of museums specifically, because with an art history degree, you can do many things. You can teach, you can go into graphic design, you can work at like an auction house that like sells artwork. But at the Wadsworth, I realized I needed to go back and get another degree. So then I went and I got my master's degree in art history, which ended up taking me about 4 years.
What educational experience do you need to become an art curator?
Well, it depends. My path is pretty typical to have your undergraduate degree and then go back and get a master's degree. I have many colleagues that went even further and have a PhD. They have a doctorate degree, which is certainly more schooling. It includes more hands-on classroom experience of teaching at the graduate level. And really the different curators sort of have different requirements, and some curators that say work with art made elsewhere in the world need to have at least 1 or 2 languages that they know. I work with American art, which doesn't mean every artist was born in America. That includes artists that emigrated to America and largely worked in the United States. But I do recall for my graduate degree, I had to at least be able to read French and write a little bit of French. So that's another thing that depends. Let's say you were interested in the art of Asia, you'd probably need an Asian language. So it depends on, what part of the world and what time period you're studying and the collections that you'll be working with.
What advice would you give to a student who is interested in art and considering a different career?
Well, I would give them a huge high five, because I feel that there are so many career opportunities within the art world that are not well known at the high school level and even at the college level. And then I would see if there are any teachers that they can go to for advice and can speak to their own experiences. Could be an art teacher, could be an English teacher, anything that's involves some creative thinking, I think is a really great place to start. I benefited from 2 great teachers. The teacher I had in high school, I ended up reaching out to her after I went to college and just to say, I'm interested in art history and do you have any advice? And then my internship at the museum also gave me a lot of useful knowledge on how to keep going in that career path. So if you can find an internship somewhere, a lot of times they are unpaid, which can be a little bit of a challenge if in your free time, you need to be earning a paycheck. But sometimes a little bit of volunteer experience, even at your own school or somewhere else in the school system. Another piece of advice is, get creative. At this point, there are so many ways that people use that creativity that didn't exist when I was your age or even in high school. there was no TikTok, Instagram, Etsy. I mean, all of these places where you have the ability to sort of share your views and demonstrate kind of what you think is interesting about the world. That's what I get to do with curating exhibits and putting together projects, is bringing to light something very positive, but also, giving some tools to look at the past and think about how does that inform the present. If this artist had a terrible life but then turned to making some beautiful artwork, how can that connect with visitors today? So I would also start by just, going and looking at art.
Well, thank you for coming. We appreciate your time here, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay. Thank you both, Priscilla and Victoria. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope you'll come to the Wadsworth.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Thank you.